Good morning, and welcome to another session of Coffee with the Commission. I'm Vaughn Poe, the Executive Director of the Alabama Real Estate Commission, and I'm joined this morning by Ryan Adair, our Education Director, and Pam Oates, one of our Education Specialists. Good morning.
Good morning.
How are the two of you?
Doing great this morning.
Excited about talking to licensees about education?
Always.
Very excited.
Thank you all again for joining us. We understand and appreciate how valuable your time is. We try to structure these as best possible to get information out so that you all know what we know. On an administrative note, if you would please use the raised hand icon if you have a question or comment, and our technical folks will recognize your hand at that point and give you an opportunity to engage with us. You should be muted by default, but if not, please mute yourself and remain muted while on the call. It will disturb other participants if you're not muted and you're traveling or you're moving around. This morning, we wanted to take a brief opportunity to talk with licensees about education. This is an odd numbered year, and so we're going to have education renewals. And so I think it's important to communicate with licensees about education, the process of renewals, the different types of approvals and licenses that go into education. Real estate education is a business for some of our licensees.
Absolutely.
That is all they do. They don't transact real estate. They transact real estate education. And so our function there is extremely important to them and what they do out there on a daily basis. Ryan, I know that you're the education director and you have a huge responsibility in monitoring and metering and inspecting our education as well with respect to quality. Would you start us off with some conversation about education in general, the number of licenses that we have, approved schools, et cetera, et cetera? Just throw us into it.
Well, I'll start by introducing Pam because Pam is now in charge of all of our education approvals. She reviews all the instructor applications,
Okay.
all the course applications, all the school applications. So Pam will start us off by kind of explaining that process.
Absolutely. Well, we license or approve every school, every administrator, every instructor, and every course that's offered within the state for either pre-license or continuing education. And so when you start looking at all those different licenses, we have 129 schools that can offer the pre-license and post-license courses. That's a lot when you think about 129 schools across the state. And there's 122 schools that offer nothing but continuing education. The numbers of schools are always increasing. Uh, Pre-licensed instructors, we have like 232 that people who are approved have gone through the requirements to become a pre-licensed instructor. And then there's another 256 that teach nothing but continuing education. They don't have the approval to teach pre-license. So when you think about it, it's kind of hard to believe that our state, we've got 251 total schools and 488 instructors, and of varying uh, levels of what they teach. And then when we talk about courses, I mean, we have 911 courses approved right now. Wow. And that's just today, because there are courses that came in overnight. So that number, it increases all the time, and it increases every week. So right now, 9/11 as of today, but it'll be more tomorrow.
Wow.
Later today, actually.
That's incredible. That is incredible. So, Ryan, I have a general question. Pam mentioned approved schools and licensed schools. What's the difference between the two?
The licensed schools are able to teach the pre-license and post-license courses. Like Pam mentioned, we have different instructors from different schools depending on the type of coursework that's offered. So a licensed school teaches pre-license, post-license, and C, or can offer those courses through that school. A CE only school is just like it's identified as. That school is only approved to sponsor or offer CE courses.
Interesting. So, are there any dates that licensees should be aware of this year with respect to renewing those educational licenses?
Yes, there are. And this is very similar to what licensees see with their renewals. To make sure everybody understands this, every even year, which everybody who's watching knows this, all salespersons and brokers and companies have to be renewed every even year by the end of September. Education is just the opposite. Every odd year is when we go through these education renewals. So that's what we're looking at this summer and going through almost the same process as the other renewal. Mid-June, around June 15th, is when the online education renewal will be available. And that will end the end of September. All these renewals can take place online. So we will advertise this to all of the schools, to all the instructors at the proper time to make sure they're aware that this is coming up. And that means all pre-licensed instructors, all CE instructors, all licensed and approved schools, and all courses that are going to continue being taught have to be renewed during that period of time.
That's interesting. Pam, you mentioned earlier that we have roughly just over 900 total courses. How many of those courses are in the classroom courses, and how many are DE
Well,
or
right,
online?
right, yeah. Well, right now we've got like 567 classroom courses.
Okay.
So the majority are classroom right now, but it's not far behind. With distance education, they have 344. Now, when we say distance education, there's different categories. So,
Could you
distance,
elaborate?
yeah, distance education can be those self-paced courses, just a typical online course that most people are familiar with. It can also be Zoom courses. It can be blended courses where they spend some of the time in a classroom and some of the time doing online work. And that's usually found in your longer courses like pre-license or post or something to that degree. But yeah, it's evening out. And I looked this morning actually, and we've got 31 right now Zoom courses um, being offered right now. And that goes from pre-license, post-license, continuing education. So we've got pretty good activity all around in the different formats.
So, speaking of which, I know there are differences between pre and post licensed instructors and CE, for
Mhm.
instance. What are some of those differences for the instructors and the courses themselves?
Oh, okay. Well, so first of all, as Ryan mentioned, a licensed school can offer the pre-license, and that's sales or broker, CE, post. They pretty much can offer anything. And they have, it's a little bit more of a requirement because they have to pay a $500 license fee. They have a $20,000 surety bond. They have to have a set location for their courses because it they have to have they have to teach the courses at that location. Now, a CE only school, there's no application fee, and they do not have to have a set location because CE courses are considered like seminars, so they can be taken on the road. And so you see those a lot of times being offered in conference rooms here or um, meeting rooms across the state. When you look at instructors, pre licensed instructors, it's quite a significant difference. With a pre licensed instructor, they first of all have to be a broker. Then they have to meet the education, experience, industry involvement to get to a pre approval. And then when they uh, make that pre approval, then they have exams that they take. There's actually two exams. They have to attend a 2-day new instructor orientation where they have to demonstrate their presentation skills. And so it's a little harder to become a pre-licensed instructor. And I think that has a lot to do with people are coming to you with a dream of changing their life, you know? And so it costs more and the stakes are higher. CE instructors, they do not have to be a broker. They just have to be able to show uh, an expertise in their field and have that the supporting documents to, you know, prove the request. So it is a little different in how they're done, and it changes as far as the numbers fluctuate, and but everything's kind of cut and dry that way.
And if I can add to that, Pam's talking about the approval of these pre-licensed instructors.
Mhm.
There's actually more involved in the renewal of those as well. These
Yeah.
pre-licensed instructors also have to take instructor continuing education. So in addition to them being brokers and having to take the 15 hours of CE to renew every even year, they also have to take 12 hours of instructor CE so they can renew that pre-licensed instructor approval every 2 years in the odd year.
Wow.
And those can be attained in different ways. I know that the Birmingham Association of Realtors sponsored one last month. The Alabama Real Estate Educators Association has one scheduled, and we have a couple scheduled ourselves this summer to give them those opportunities to satisfy them.
Wow. So I guess a follow-on question would be, do you have are there any questions out there? We have a lot of information that we're sharing, and I know some of you that are educators may understand it, others may not. But are there any questions from anyone that's joining out there? Any attendees? No questions? Okay, excellent. So Ryan, I guess a follow-on question would be, we administer and monitor a lot of education. Is there any type of inspection that you all do, or do you evaluate instructors or courses or that sort of thing?
We do. We have two education auditors.
Okay.
Some brokers out there may be familiar with our company auditors who meet with a qualifying broker, review the files and all that. We do the same thing in education. The schools can be audited and their records can be audited by our two education auditors. And then also they can visit a pre-license course or a post-license course or CE course, sit through that to make sure the correct information is being taught the correct way.
Well, and I guess a follow-on question would be, do you all ever uncover any deficiencies or areas for needed improvement as you're inspecting schools or courses?
We do. I mean, there could be some audits where it was great instruction and they did everything perfectly. Then there are others where the instructor may be struggling with teaching the right way, which could involve maybe reading material to the students instead of actually teaching it. Some instructors may be confused with the information that they're sharing and they're not being as accurate as they need to be with that topic, especially in the pre-license courses. That's where we really want to make sure the correct information is being taught so these students can be prepared for the license exam. If we see something like that, and our auditors can always make references for improvement. If we see something that could be considered a license law violation, we do give that instructor, we'll identify that problem and give that instructor the opportunity to correct it. So we can do a follow-up audit and make sure it has been corrected.
Okay, so there is a process.
There's a process, yes.
Understood. And I know in general we talk about making our licensees better, and the same is true of educators. You want them to be better as well. Education is so important. It's generally an individual's indoctrination into real estate, and it's either a good experience or a bad experience. And if it's a bad experience, that could be of concern for us because this individual now, doesn't quite have the best step forward in real estate. So entering into a renewal year, what are some of the dates or windows or ranges of when you all would like to see renewals?
Well,
And that's a loaded question.
loaded question. Absolutely. Renewals will take place starting on June 15th.
Okay.
So at that point, well, with education, it's a 100% online process. It's been that way for several renewals for us. And so the instructors will log in, they'll pay their renewal fee. If they have courses there, they'll go in and submit an outline. And of course, we ask that all outlines be updated because so many times it's so easy for instructors to just, use the same outline over and over and over. And then when the auditors go in and they look at this outline and they're like, this is not even what's being taught. And they're like, oh, well, I changed that. And it's like, well, then that's what renewals are for, to let us know what your updated outline looks like. And so schools have to renew some of the things they that we will renew for them. Any commission prescribed outlines, courses, and those are like pre-license, post-license, um, broker pre, the reciprocals, risk management, the new mandatory broker courses, anything in which we provide the outline, uh, we'll renew those at no charge, and we'll take care of that process. All elective courses have to be renewed by the instructor in the schools. And so that kind of process starts on June 15th and has to be finished and completed by September 30th.
Okay. Uh, yes.
I was just going to add this regarding the deadlines. Just like we strongly encourage licensees to finish their CE early instead of waiting until the last week of September or the last day of that month to finish their CE courses.
That never happens.
Oh, well, never.
Never.
Because that can put them in a bad situation where the CE is not reported prior to October the 1st and they're forced inactive. So I'm always trying to encourage licensees to take their CE early. And we'll do the same thing with instructors to make sure they take their CE early, make sure they've renewed everything, because there could be some licensees who are planning on taking a course that's being offered October the 3rd. Excuse me. And there's a chance that if someone dropped the ball and didn't renew that course, then if the licensee takes that course, there's no CE credit because it hasn't been renewed. So we always encourage all licensees to renew their licenses early, and we're encouraging all schools, all instructors to take care of their renewals early as well. Make sure everything's completed before October.
Are there any questions out there? I know we're getting into sort of the nuts and bolts of renewing those educational licenses, and I'm certain there's at least one or two questions out there. Questions? Excellent. Well, I do have a final question. So we were speaking earlier about quality real estate education. We talk a lot about quality here, and I know that last year we were changing some of the criteria by which we evaluate potential instructors. Would you talk about that just a little bit? There's a scoring system that we revamped and sort of updated to really help ensure that we have nothing but the best instructors out there.
Well, Pam's kind of been working with the new instructor orientations and has been very involved in these changes. But basically, we are looking at, and she mentioned just a little earlier, that part of the instructor approval process involves taking two tests. One will be on license law, and another will be on kind of real estate in general, just to make sure that before they're even approved by us, they're showing that they have the knowledge that's needed to teach pre-license. So they have to pass those tests first, and this is all based on a new point system that we have. They can come to the new instructor orientation. Pam will cover the topics that they missed, that they answered incorrectly, to make sure everybody's on the same page. And then as well, also we'll teach them how to teach while they're here. And then, like she mentioned, at the end, each individual will give a presentation in front of the education staff, and we'll rate them on that to make sure they know what they're talking about and they know how to present professionally, basically. And if I've missed anything, Pam can.
How involved is that process, Pam?
Very. Well, they in the past, the instructors would meet a 70-point requirement on the application. After that, they had to attend a new instructor orientation. And so that was all we had the authority to do through license law, was if they have the points, they can attend the orientation and they can teach. Now, we could advise them, we could help them, we could recognize that maybe this person or that person needed a little help, but we didn't have the authority to say no. As strange as that may sound, we did not, but we do now. And so now there's a point system where there's a pre-approval, and that just gets you started into the real approval process. And so we're working on it with like a deduction system. So if they just bomb the exams, points are deducted. If they lose points on the evaluation of their presentation, if they don't have 70 points at the end, then it's a no. We can actually say, come back and try again.
Exactly. I think coming back and trying again is good for the instructor and also good for the
Absolutely.
student. I mean, having a primarily quantitative approach where you get the points and there you go, and moving to a qualitative approach where you
Right.
see and know how they will respond and interact with students and how they're going to deliver content is extremely important because their
Absolutely.
primary function in that vein is to teach education. And some people may think in their minds that they're absolutely born to teach, and then they get in front of a classroom of students and reality sets in.
And that's what we want them to understand. Just because you've been successful in real estate doesn't mean you can effectively teach it to other people. There's a difference in the two.
Huge difference. Huge difference. Are there any other questions out there? Comments? Critiques? Tony? Tony, thanks for joining us.
Good morning. First of all, I want to say I really appreciate what y'all do. Pam is always so great when she comes in and does uh, watches your class, observation of your class, because she gives positive feedback. Even if there's something that's lacking, she'll say it in a positive way. And so I appreciate that. My question really has nothing to do with any of that. I try to keep up, but I'm always a little anxious when it comes to making sure that my outline of the law for Alabama license law portion of the content for pre-license is up to date. Are all of the license law amendments that are, I mean, because we talk so much about this is coming up, and I said, I don't want to get it mixed up with what is coming up and what has actually been passed. So are the license law amendments that are in the instructor resources portion of the commission website, are they up to date with everything?
Not completely, Tony. There are a couple more that we are having added right now. But yeah, we've been trying to make sure well, some that we want to add, they're not effective yet. So there have been times we waited
Right.
until that rule is actually effective before posting it. But we try to share with instructors in the instructor resources all of these amendments that affect them, so you can have a reference to them.
Right, and
Well,
that's really exactly, you mentioned exactly what my issue is that I don't often know when the effective date is, or I've forgotten when it is or something. So yes, okay, that answers that question. Thank you, Ryan.
Yes, ma'am.
also, Tony and others, um, when we do have an amendment pass, it is sent to the exam provider so they can make any necessary updates to questions, and then they're reviewed so that we make sure that they're um, fit within the amendments appropriately.
And to go along with that, we do have a meeting planned with Pearson View for June, where they're going to come here and we're going to sit down with their representative. We're going to sit down with our legal division. We're going to look through license law and the state specific items on the exam to see what might be outdated. Hopefully nothing is. I've been trying to keep that current. but see what items might need to be changed, what new items might need to be written. So we're going to have a very detailed overlook of all the state specific exam items in the coming months.
Ryan, you just mentioned something that I'm not sure all of our licensees or even educators may know. You mentioned Pearson VUE as an exam provider. I thought we were with PSI.
That actually changed the first of this year. We were contracted with PSI for several years, and Pearson VUE won the examination contract, and that officially started January the 3rd was the first official date of that.
Wow, okay. The new exam is out there. Interesting.
And just make sure everybody's aware, the main change that took place with this new exam provider, the exam that was most affected was the broker license examination. Because in the past, I think everybody's aware that the national portion of that exam consisted of simulation items, not multiple choice. And that has changed. With Pearson VUE, the entire examination is now multiple choice, both the national portions and the state.
Wow, so brokers or potential brokers should be aware of that.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
And the content is more real estate, general real estate knowledge. And so that is a change. And so we're hoping that, and all our instructors, our online providers, they had to scramble and update courses and everything so that they could prepare broker students for the new change.
In closing, Ryan, I do understand that the exam, has changed and the provider has changed as well. But I wanted to go back and just do a follow-up question. We talk a lot about classroom instruction and virtual instruction. Virtual courses and virtual delivery have been the hot thing since COVID-19 several years ago. What are some of the subtle differences or requirements between classroom and virtual? I know that I've received several phone calls from licensees, and they presume that they're the same. You can teach a classroom course virtually because it's the same. Is that so, or
It is not the same. An instructor can see the students, but it's not the same as being in the same room as the students. There's a lot in instruction. There's a lot of interpersonal communication that takes place. That's a big part of adequate instruction is communicating with your students. When the two are separated, when the instructor is here virtually and students are in their houses or spread all over the place, you don't have that same contact, and it's more difficult for the instructor to be personal with the students. And that's why we kind of limited the number of students who can participate in a virtual course, because there could be some who could have 80 students. But the instruction is not going to be as effective if the instructor cannot communicate with each of those students. So one of the disadvantages of the virtual is the lack of interpersonal communication between the instructor and the student, and the fact that there could be not a lot, but there could be some students who experience computer problems and they get disconnected. And the school or the instructor has to try to get that student back on. So the student is missing content, and they lose connection. The instructor is being thrown off course if they lose. So there are little things like that that can make a virtual course more difficult to effectively teach.
wow, interesting. That is very interesting. Are there any other questions out there? Good morning. Thanks for joining us.
This is Fagel. Good morning. I had a quick question. So, with doing the continuing education, is there any way to ever get more than what you need? And how long if so, how long does that carry over if you're in an off year?
Okay, we do not allow CE credit to be carried over from one license period to another. You can take as much CE as you want to in a license period. From the date that you renew your license, let's go back as an example. Let's go back to last year when you renewed your license. Let's say you renewed your license in July of 2022. As soon as that renewed license was issued, you can start taking CE for the next renewal in 2024. Take as many hours as you want to from that date until you renew your license in 2024. All that CE is going to archive when you renew in 2024. Even if you've taken 26 hours instead of just 15, you can't carry that over from one license period to another, but you can take as much as you want to. Did that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Okay.
Appreciate that.
Any other questions out there? Well, that's not a problem. If you have questions later, please reach out to us. We're always here. We are available in different mediums and during most times of the day and night.
Yeah.
And night. Don't forget tomorrow's our commission hearing. We will broadcast that via Teams as well. So if you're not busy at 9 a.m. tomorrow morning, we will gavel in the commission. If you do want to reach out to us after this, we can be reached by telephone at 334-242-5544. We have a very active webpage, and that webpage is arec.alabama.gov. We have a very active Facebook page as well. We're on Facebook at arecalabama.gov. Our Briefly Legal is also broadcast via Teams. It's held quarterly. Be on the lookout for that. We have a very active YouTube channel. Please visit our YouTube channel. A lot of the questions that you all ask have already been scripted and answered via YouTube. Our YouTube channel is AREC Alabama Gov. One word, AREC Alabama Gov. Check out our YouTube channel. A lot of your general questions are also answered via Twitter. So our Twitter handle is AREC Alabama Gov. Again, our Twitter handle is AREC Alabama Gov. And there are many different ways to get in contact with us. Whatever suits you, please use that medium. Please join us on Wednesday, April 19th for our next Coffee with the Commission. And thank you very much for your time.